Josh, thank you for joining us. And we know you run different centers in places like Texas and Florida and Georgia. What are you seeing in terms of consumer behavior as these case numbers start to tick up?
You know, it was interesting answering that question right after the graphics that y'all were just showing about the increase in COVID around the country, because we are seeing dramatic increases in traffic at our properties. So we have multiple properties in Texas, multiple properties in Georgia. We have a property in Florida, and those are the ones that opened in late April, early May. And the traffic on those started off a little slow, but has ramped up quickly. And to the point where our traffic last week was only down about 20 to 25% from last year. And when you think about the fact that our movie theaters are still shut down, that 20 to 25% reduction in traffic is a lot better than what we were expecting 75 days ago in the middle of the pandemic. So, yeah, we're seeing increases in traffic across our portfolio.
It's really interesting to see those levels come back so fast. Are consumers spending as much? Are their patterns changing at all?
Yeah, I mean, the patterns are much different. And so the best example are retailers that are best at e-commerce, and that includes restaurants in the takeout market, that the retailers have dramatically shifted to, especially during the pandemic when they were shut down, to fulfillment, e-commerce, and for the restaurants, takeout. And so some of our restaurants increase their takeout from, say, 10% to 50% of their sales compared to last year. Now that they're opening up, they have limited capacity, but they're still keeping their takeout levels high. And so therefore, their sales are comparable to last year. Other retailers or other restaurants maybe aren't as conducive to doing takeout. And so their sales are just directly impacted by the limited occupancy that's allowed. But there are a lot of changes in the retailers and how they treat customers and how they limit the customers in the stores. And some retailers are only doing appointment only in their stores. Some are requiring masks in order to come in. So every retailer is different. But yes, I mean, the evolution of retailers into e-commerce and omni-channel retail has been fast and dramatic.
Just want to point out what's happening on the other side of your screen. The market taking a dip lower here. We're now down more than 1,000 points on the Dow, a decline of almost 4%, 1,012 points as the sell-off deepens. We go below 26,000. Josh, as you talk about reopening and traffic returning, are all your tenants paying rent again?
That's a good question. So in April and March, or April and May, no. I mean, we've probably collected 20 to 25% of our rents. But now as tenants are reopening, June collections are already at about 49%. And June 10th, June 11th. And so we're still have a few days of collections ahead of us. So we're expecting that maybe to hit 55, 60% of our collections. So we're still way off, but like I said, that's more optimistic and rosy than we thought we were 75 days ago, and much better than we were a month ago.
And finally, Josh, anything you can tell us about whether consumers are wearing masks, whether they're following social distancing, whether your stores do contact tracing, if an employee or a consumer gets infected? I mean, best practices for trying to mitigate the spread in many of the states that you operate in, which are seeing high cases.
Yeah. Well, and so the fight against COVID starts on the property itself. So our properties are outdoor lifestyle centers. And so the first step is that we have fresh air and you don't have to touch a handle to get into our public space. So we are allowing the retailers and the restaurants to come out onto the sidewalks. So retailers are exhibiting their wares on the sidewalk so that people don't even have to come in the stores. Restaurants are expanding patios. We've taken over parking spaces to extend patios. We've taken over drive aisles to extend patios and increase capacity. But then once you get into the store itself, that's up to each individual retailer and the local jurisdiction. So I was at one shopping center this past weekend, and there were some retailers that literally wouldn't let you in the door if you didn't have a mask. There were other retailers that were not as dramatic, but every retailer that I went into, counting the people coming into the store to limit the occupancy and to allow for social distancing. And people in the stores were allowed to not wear a mask. I would say it was probably 75% were wearing masks, but there were some that were not. And as far as contact tracing, I'm not qualified to answer that. That would be up to the local jurisdiction to, and every jurisdiction that we have is going to be different on that front.